Dear class 10 students, let us continue with the ninth number, religious changes. So there, there we could see lot of religious changes made by British, and British decided that they will not interfere in the religious affairs, customs and tradition of the Indians. Number 10, changes in the army. So here after the war of 1857, a lot of changes were made in the army department. So the Indian army was reorganized after 1858. So they were reunited by the British, especially by the Queen, and this is done. This reorganizations or reunity is done in order to not to happen any another war in the country against British. So let us see the first one. The strength of the European troops in India was increased, so that the European army can easily dominate the Indian army in any problem or in any attack. So the ratio of European to Indian troops was fixed. Here 1 is equal to 2 and 2 is equal to 5. So this way the ratio was maintained between European troops and the Indian troops. Now we have the second point. European troops were kept in key geographical and military troop positions. So European troops are kept in the central places of the country or the provinces, whereas the Indian soldiers were kept in the border areas and also in the different positions in a military. The Europeans were given much favor, or they were given much chances to have the high positions in the army. Now number 3, to desist the Indian soldiers from rising against the British rule, the sophisticated weapons and ammunitions were never placed under the charge of Indians. So here, in order to stop Indian soldiers to not to go against at any time in the future during the British rule, the Indian soldiers were not given the high advanced weapons, or they are not allowed to given, or they are not given the in charges of the high technological weapons. And also in the artillery units also, the Indian soldiers were not respected, or they were not given the responsibilities, and the Indian soldiers were mostly kept in the mountain areas, and this is done so that the Indian soldiers may be always in isolations or in separations. So in this way we could see the Indian soldiers are still facing here a lot of discrimination, lot of humiliation and insult. Number 4, discrimination on the basis of caste, region, religion was practiced in recruitment to the army, and also for the appointment of the Indian soldiers in the army were done on the basis of caste, religion and also region, area wise. Now number 5, in order to discourage nationalism, so in order to not to grow up nationalism, they introduced the caste and communities should be separated. That means the people of the country belonging to different sections should not be united. Sorry, not people, the soldiers. Now next one, 6. The newspapers, generals and the nationalist publications were prevented. So these all were stopped, so that these all Indian newspapers may not write any wrong things against the British. So that was the main thing done in against of the Indian soldiers. Now let us go to 11 point, economic exploitation. The uprising of 1857 ended the era of territorial expansion. So this war of 1857 was basically ended with the territorial expansion. That means British expanded its own territories in many parts of the country, and now British is mostly focusing on the economic exploitation, and that's why we could see, in order to exploit economically India, they have implemented certain rules and regulations. Like here, first point, India was turned into a typical colonial economy. So India was made as a colony of exporting raw materials to British factories, and those raw materials which are made useful goods, they were again brought it back to India for selling in the Indian market. Now number 2, the salaries and allowances of the Secretary of States and members of the Indian Council, and then the chief civil servants, military officers were paid from the Indian treasury, or we call the Indian wealth. Now we have the number 3, peasants were impoverished. So peasants also suffered a lot. They still were impoverished, mean made more poorer. That means their situation became more critical. Their condition became more critical. They were not allowed to cultivate the Indian crops. They were forcefully cultivate still the indigo in different places like Bihar and so on. Now number 4, rural artisans. That means the local skilled people or the laborers who are working in the cotton industries. The cotton industries were destroyed, like where there the handicraft, spinning and weaving used to take place. These all were collapsed, destroyed. Number 4, the Indian had to pay heavy interest and dividend of the British capital invested in India, and then India also has to pay a heavy interest to the British. So here the British invested their surplus capital in India in railways, plantations, coal mines, jute mills, shipping and etc. Now let us go to rise of nationalism. So the uprising of 1850 was first struggle of Indian people for freedom from British imperialism. It paved the way for the rise of national movement, and that continued. So the sacrifices of Nana Sahib, Mangal Pandey and Rani Lakshmi Bai served as a source of inspirations for the future freedom fighters. So that was the nationalism developed, feeling of nationalism developed among the Indians even after the war of 1857, and that continued till the country got freedom in 1947. So number 13, widening of gulf between Hindus and Muslims. Now the British mainly targeted the Hindus and Muslims. It did not want that both the groups should be united, because when we could see the war of 1857, both the groups were very enthusiastically and strongly participated. So now both the groups were kept isolated, or through the rule and divide system, both the communities were kept separated. So that led the another big problem, or the war should not get started from these two different community people. So this way we could see the consequences of the war that took place after 1857. So this is the point, dear students. You just go through once again through this video and then try to understand. Thanks.